Baxter Bridge State Forest Campground is located in Michigan's Lower Peninsula. Technically, it's in Manton when you go to look it up. However, it's directly below Kingsley on number 31 road. The campground is pretty noticeable from the road as there's a decent-sized sign right there. Plus, there is a stop sign and a marker for the North Country Trail hiking trail. As the hiking trail runs directly through the campground, it's actually a really good spot if you're looking to camp and stay the night and do an out and back, or if you're trying to plan a backpacking trip down the North Country Trail and you need somewhere to stay along the route. The drive going into the campground is absolutely beautiful. I love going through large stands of old growth red pine, especially with a beautiful blue sky up in the background. It's just something about the trees lined up perfectly that I really enjoy, so I'm going to take the time and show you the whole road going into the campground. The entire campground, including all of the sites, except for a few down lower in the lower portion of the campground, are surrounded by these big beautiful red pines, and that's one of the things that I really like about this campground. Here at the registration station, there is your typical campground information with a pretty decent little map of the campground here. You can see way up on the upper right, there's 3 campsites down closer to the river. The rest of the campsites are all grouped together in what I'm calling the upper part of the campground here. The cost to stay here at this campground is $20 a night, and you simply have a pay pole like at your typical State Forest campgrounds that you use to pay for your stay here. I'm going to walk the loop around the first part of the campground here, and we'll take a look at the campsites. There's one campsite way off there to the left that's being used, so I'm definitely not going to go invade their privacy and show you that one. But we'll take a look here at the rest. As I hike past the very first of a few different outhouses that are scattered throughout the campground here, I want to take a second and point out the fact that all of these outhouses seem to be really well maintained. Almost makes me think that somebody was just recently here and cleaned them, because they were all really clean inside and there was no odor coming from any of them, which is not always the case for a State Forest campground as remote as this one makes you feel. One thing that I really like about this campground, even though you're surrounded by old growth red pine, you typically would think that with the red pine stand, you can see all over the place and see your neighbors really well. But there's a lot of low growth shrubs in here, a lot of small white pines growing up in here. It really does a good job of keeping the campsites feeling separated from one another and making you feel a little more remote and alone than what you really are. There's a little path here that takes you to the hand pump for the upper part of the campground, so you can pump your water and take it back to your campsite. There is a second one that's down in the lower part of the campground near the river. The same little path here also leads to another campsite that I'm going to walk into. As I walk through this campsite, I want to point out the fact that most of these campsites are really nice and level. They almost all could accommodate a pop-up camper, small trailer, maybe even a medium-sized trailer, and definitely a good pad to put a tent down. Each campsite has a really nice fire ring to it and a picnic table. The campground does have a main road that splits off a couple different times up here, but along each one of the splits there are a few campsites that really helps disperse them a little bit more so you're not on top of your neighbor. Here's another campsite that's tucked back in the trees a little ways, giving you that nice remote feeling that I was just talking about. Makes you feel more secluded than what you actually really are. Off to the left here we have a small parking space for campground visitors, or maybe even a little bit of overflow for people that are coming down here fishing. However, there's a really large parking space for overflow parking up here just a little ways closer to the river. As the main road to the campground splits off and goes down towards the lower part of the campground, there are 2 more outhouses here, and same thing, these are really nicely maintained outhouses. It does seem like a little hike to get down here to the lower part of the campground, but a reminder as we get down this way, there is another water source down here, and there are more outhouses. Here we have one of the first campsites in what I'm calling the lower part of the campground. There's actually another lower level than this, so this is more like mid-level. We're going to come up here and take a look at this level of the campground, and we'll actually get our first view of the river from right up here as well. These sites over on this part of the campground are a little less shaded and have quite a bit more grass to them than what the sites that are underneath the big red pines have. This might make it more or less ideal for some campers. It's going to be a wetter morning if you're walking around out here in this wet grass. However, it might be a little more padding if you're just throwing down a tent and you don't have an air mattress or anything with you. Some people might not care either way, and they might want to be closer to the water so that they have easier access or quicker access if they're here to fish. Here we have 2 more outhouses. We're up to 6 outhouses now for this campground. And now we're going to curve around to the couple of sites that are actually down here along the river. You don't have super awesome river access from right here, but you do have a good river view, and you do have an opportunity up here to get close enough to maybe do a little bit of fishing. But for the most part, the fishing's going to be down farther towards the last couple of campsites. Now, I've actually stayed at this campground at least once that I can think of, and the one time that I really remember staying here, I stayed down in one of these lower sites, and the campground was absolutely packed. I got really lucky to get one of these sites, let alone any site in this campground, and I can say that at night, it just got super quiet down here. So that's one thing I liked about this campground, and it might not always be the case, but it is a nice, quiet campground typically. Usually you have people that are here respecting the quiet and the nature, and they're here to fish. They're not here to make a ton of noise. You're looking out over the Manistee River, and most people that are coming to this campground to fish are coming here to try trout fishing. Whether you're expert level trout fishermen or you're just learning, this is definitely the river to come to. Most anglers will come out here in the spring and fall when it's prime time fishing for a variety of fish, including salmon, steelhead, and brook and brown trout that are pretty heavy in population out here in the river during that early spring and fall season. Here is the second water source in the campground, one that was upper and the one down here at the lower part of the campground. That way you don't have to walk across the entire campground or drive up and disturb everybody in the middle of the night trying to get some last-minute water before bed. They also conveniently placed a second pay station down here at the lower part of the campground because probably most people staying down here are coming here to fish, and they don't have any interest in staying far up away from the river. Right here to my right is a pretty large overflow parking area. This is not a campsite. Camping's not allowed here, but they keep it mowed so that you can definitely park your vehicle here for anglers dragging out canoes, kayaks, or just looking to wade the river and do some fishing. This is the lower level of the campground. Now you can probably see why I consider there to be an upper level, a mid-level, and a lower level. This is definitely more remote feeling. The one person that's staying down here has this whole area secluded to himself, minus anyone that's just driving around to check out the place. Down here you also have a little bit of a hiking trail that takes you down to the river. So we're gonna hike down and check this out. It would be a great spot to launch your canoe or your kayak. Probably important to point out that this is not a great site to come down and go swimming at. I really didn't see anywhere right around here that would be a great swim site. There's no sandy beach or easy access for swimmers. That being said, it definitely is a nice quiet area to come back and maybe just throw up a portable camp chair and sit back and relax and watch the water flow by. I turned the volume up a bit there on the audio in the background so you could hear that high-pitched buzz of the cicadas here in the campground. It sounds so electric and it's so amazing. I absolutely love hearing that in the summertime. And if you're staying here at the campground, you can expect to hear it pretty much non-stop and fairly loud. There is one campsite here in the middle of the campground that I missed, so I thought I'd circle back around and give you a good look at this one. It's pretty much in the middle, but it feels really remote. Just up the road on the other side of the bridge here, we have a boat launch and parking area for easier access to the river for canoers, kayakers, or people actually looking to launch a small boat out here. There is another outhouse that's over here that's also seems to be very well maintained. And right here at the launch site, you have your typical boat launch billboard with conversation about invasive species and some of the fish that are out here in the river. You can see there's a nice cement pad right up to the edge of the water, and it's definitely not super deep right out here. You're not going to be launching a huge boat out into this water. You're looking more for something small like a regular bass boat or even a flat bottom boat that's going to be safer going down the river. If you're looking for this access site on the map, it is called the Old US 131 State Forest Canoe Pullout, and it is located on Google Maps. While I pan the camera over some tiny minnows here in the water, I also want to point out that if you're up for a hike, definitely check out the High Banks Rollaway. This is a little bit of a hike from the campground, so definitely do your research and be prepared, but it's worth every step along the North Country Trail, especially if you're up here in the fall and you want an absolutely stunning fall color view looking over the Manistee River. Let's check out the fishing information here real quick. Before I end the video, I definitely want to say this is one of my go-to destinations if I'm looking to stay in this area of the state. I really like Baxter Bridge. This campground is definitely a quieter option than some of the neighboring campgrounds that sit right on ORV trails that get heavily used by loud ORVs and ATVs during the summer months.